So, what we're really going to talk about today is kind of your story as an advocate. And a lot of people today are advocating on social media, finding those online platforms. For me, it's, the podcast, but you have really done a lot of in person advocacy and you show up face to face. So, can you share some of the ways that you show up and create those face-to-face interactions with kids, consumers, and people not directly tied to the beef industry?
I guess when I was able to start becoming more active within beef industry, the route that I did take was with the cattle women. And I guess I was very fortunate. I had a mentor. I had a couple mentors, but Kay Nelson was the one that steered me into the importance of education with our students, the importance of education in the classroom. So she kind of is the one that 10, 15 years ago got me started with the education in the classroom. I mean, she would line up teachers or teachers that she knew, she would have me contact them. So I was very fortunate to have a mentor to allow me to do that. And once you start getting into the classrooms, you really see the questions that those kids have. And it was really interesting, the variety of questions over the years. And me being a registered nurse, I dealt a lot one-on-one with patients and families. Going into the classroom now had me in a group setting. So there was a little learning curve there, but I felt it was so important based on the reaction of the kids, the students, and the teachers. So then I, did the classroom K through second grade, where you take our books into the classrooms and you read them and then you talk about them. And you explain kind of the story, like what do I do compared to this book. So I make real life, so they understand that it's not just in a book, but this is what I do. Last year when I was in the second grade classroom, I took one of Amanda Gradke's books, C is for Care. And it kind of talks about all the things we do caring for cattle and the work that we do. It talks about, in the winter storm, what we do. And that also happened to be the classroom my grandson was in, one of my grandsons. And it was kind of interesting at the end of reading this book, comparing what myself and my grandson do, during certain seasons. A couple of the kids commented they had no idea how hard a rancher works or how hard their classmate works sometimes. Like in the storms, they're playing in the snow. He's out over here helping shovel the snow. So it was a real great opportunity for those students to understand, what we do in the day-to-day life. In situations where I've been in the middle school, it was kind of explaining the career of what a rancher does. And there again, it's kind of interesting, some of the questions. I kind of had a presentation where it showed the different seasons of what we do. Again, the students didn't realize, the things that we do for our cattle when the weather is not the greatest. And then also, when it comes working with students and adults at different events, one example is when we go to the military appreciation at the North Dakota State Fair. I really enjoy that event. It's a lunch that we sponsored for the military in North Dakota, and families come through. And there's, kids from all ages, from the babies in the strollers to the teenage adults, and even the college students are there. And there's some really great conversations I've had. One that really sticks out in my mind is a discussion with the dad and his two teenage sons, who were both in different type of sports. And, I said, what do you guys use for your protein recovery after these long games or these runs, if you're a runner? And they all said, well, we like to have beef, we do have some chicken, and then, we do some of these protein shakes. And I said, well, what's your first choice? And of course, the sons say, well, we'd love it if Dad would buy us steaks every day. But they understood the importance that, when you're an athlete, you need an appropriate protein for that recovery. And at that young age, it was great to see that these, young men were realizing that the right protein is important. So we had some great discussion with that. So there's so many things that you gain when you can do that one-to-one or that group presentation. The discussion that comes out, the questions that they're asked leads to another question. And I think that shows our true, sincere, how we care for our animals, how we care for the environment, when we're able to have that face-to-face discussion, leading from question to question. And I like to hear their stories. I ask them, what is their experiences? Have you been on a ranch? Have you been on a farm? And of course, when you ask that to a first and kindergarten class or a first grade class, all the kids' hands come up and they have to tell you the story about the one time they went to grandpa's or to aunt's. But that's important because they feel like they have a connection to what a cow is. I mean, everything is a cow, and that's okay. That's their understanding, and so you can have great discussions there. So that's why, for me, it's important to do the one-to-one. And, sometimes there is some of the social media that goes with it. When we deliver our books, the North Dakota Cattle Women have a strong program where we get these beef accurate books out into the school libraries and city libraries. And we do like to share that on social media. A couple of reasons is, number one, so people know those books are there and available. And then also just to, acknowledge, those that have helped us fund these books, to get these books out to the areas where we get them into the libraries. So social media does play a piece there, but my choice, I guess, is that one-to-one.
Folks, if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to listen to the full one on the Casual Cattle Conversations podcast right here on YouTube or wherever you find your favorite podcast players. Happy ranching.